Ancient burial mounds where spectral animals roam, a Pacific Northwestern sanctuary whose bounds harbor demonic activity, and a blood-soaked battlefield with ghostly soldiers await on this list of some of the most haunted hikes in the US. Are you sure you're ready for this trek? Hey guys, and thanks for joining me on this journey down some of the most infamous haunted hiking trails in the United States. Now, it's no secret that North America hosts its fair share of beautiful and diverse nature expanses, and for this adventure, I tried to really spread things out across the whole of the country. Chillingly, however, between ancient native legends and countless accidental deaths, many of our most cherished pathways are marred with disturbing ghost stories, purported monster sightings, cult activity, and more. Let's get rolling. Our first haunt lands us right on the northeastern border of Iowa at the Effigy Mounds National Monument. The Effigy Mounds National Monument and its surrounding trails, which are placed out of Harpers Ferry, Iowa, is a sprawling region preserving over 200 prehistoric mounds constructed by pre-Columbian mound builders. That's weathered mounds are tied to a range of scary stories and tales of encounters with the unknown. Historically, along the Mississippi River and through the late woodland period, which lasted from 1400 to 750 BCE, a culture recognized today as the Effigy Mound Builders would construct a series of earthen mounds shaped like various animals, including bear, bison, birds, deer, lynx, turtles, panthers, and water spirits. However, unlike earlier groups, community near these burial sites lacked essential trade potential, and most of their people ended up migrating elsewhere. Much later, through the late 19th century, one Ellison Orr, who was born in McGregor, Iowa in 1857, would actively promote the preservation and study of protecting the cultural and natural landmarks of northeastern Iowa, and he would play a crucial role in the establishment of the Effigy Mounds National Monument in 1949, after which he would donate a bulk of his work, which included some of the first mapping and survey projects, to the monument's cause. Incidentally, these works are actually still utilized by scholars and researchers to this very day. Over the following decades, the Effigy Mounds National Monument would grow in popularity, with the park welcoming various expansions and construction of trailheads and landmarks across the expanse. And in the present, they continue to offer a fascinating look into the history of humankind itself to around 100,000 annual visitors. Not surprisingly, of its countless visitors, many who visit the Effigy Mounds have later told of harrowing encounters with the supernatural, and it's widely believed the ancient spirits of the locale's native people might still linger, with stories of ghostly moans heard in the distance, chanting that floats on the winds, extreme cold patches felt in adverse weather, and shadowy figures sighted slinking about. True to its nature, various animal spirits, most of which that are described as semi-transparent and glowing faintly, have been encountered after dark and usually match the figures depicted on nearby mounds. Lastly, several paranormal investigations of the park have yielded high EMF levels despite a complete absence of electricity, crystal clear EVPs containing long-dead languages, orbs captured in photography, silhouettes in video, and hits on communicative devices such as Ouija boards and spirit boxes. And a handful of accounts detail sightings of various cryptids, both from native lore and some that are unidentifiable. And on to number 2, which takes us to northeastern Portland, Oregon, to the ever-famous Grotto. The Grotto, or the National Sanctuary of Our Sorrowful Mother, which is located in Portland, Oregon, is an awe-inspiring Catholic outdoor altar recognized for its architectural beauty and natural allure. That, conversely, is also recognized as one of the beloved city's most haunted landmarks. Historically, the Grotto was first established back in 1924 by one Friar Ambrose Meyer, who hailed from Ontario, Canada, who was sent to PDX to serve as a pastor for the Archdiocese of Portland, and who was fulfilling a promise he'd made to a young boy from his hometown whose mother was close to death following the birth of his sister. And upon his arrival to the area, he quickly found acreage just northwest of the city that would be perfect for a sanctuary, after which a national campaign would be held to raise funding needed for a purchase. In his heart, Meyer envisioned the creation of a natural cathedral, and in September of 1923, a cave was carved out of a nearby 110-foot basalt cliff, with a statue of Mary holding Jesus' crucified body added shortly after. At the Grotto's grand opening on May 29th of 1924, 3,000 people gathered to participate in its first mass, and a few years later, amidst growing popularity, a marble recreation of Michelangelo's Pieta was installed. More recently, in 1955, the Chapel of Mary was dedicated on Grotto grounds, and in 1983, the whole of the site was dedicated as a national sanctuary. Sadly, in 2012, the grotto was hit by a group of vandals who toppled and beheaded various statues comprised of centuries-old marble, and though these effigies have since been repaired or replaced, the event has left a scar in the memories of those who cherish its bounds. Now, this next part is for those of you wondering why we might include a natural cathedral on our list of haunted hikes. Today, the grotto includes a sprawling 62 acres of forest, trails, and even a botanical garden atop its signature cliffs, which is accessible by way of an elevator attached directly to the cliff walls. For a place of such devotion, the grotto is also surrounded by its fair share of ghost stories, and those who have braved its bounds have reported disembodied voices heard from the woods without source, dark shapes spied slinking through the foliage, and the constant and pervasive feeling of being watched. Informal paranormal investigations of the grotto have yielded high EMF levels, chilling EVPs, and orbs captured in both photography and video, while others have reported equipment failures or instances of personal electronics going dead inexplicably. Easily the most famous tales surrounding the grotto claim its bounds are haunted by an unidentified ghostly little girl, who namely shows herself to female visitors. And while some claim she's some sort of religious wraith, others aren't so certain, and tell that she might be some form of evil spirit or demon attempting to trick or even possess the devout. Lastly, the ghost of Father Meyer himself has been known to appear as a calming presence, primarily manifesting to visitors in times of need, and most note that when his entity is around, all other supernatural activity on site ceases abruptly. Number 3 has us skirting the northwestern border of Maryland and crossing the infamous Antietam National Battlefield. The Bloody Lane Trail, which is located on the Antietam National Battlefield in Sharpsburg, Maryland, right along the Maryland-West Virginia border, is a route cutting through the preserved landscape of what is still considered the bloodiest single-day battle in the history of America. Its length is surrounded by a host of terrifying ghost stories and tales of lingering restless spirits. Historically, at the height of the Civil War, in 1862, Confederate General Robert E. Lee would invade Maryland in the hopes of pushing the fighting from the South and into federal territory, where he'd finally have a shot at capturing the federal capital of Washington, D.C. Conversely, President Abraham Lincoln would entrust Major General George B. McClellan with the state's defense in order to maintain Republican control of Congress. On the afternoon of September 16th, McClellan would send a detachment led by Major General Joseph Hooker across Antietam Creek in order to locate Lee's left flank, and around dusk, this detachment would run headlong into Confederate General John Bell Hood and his men, after which a skirmish would ensue. Beginning at dawn on the 17th, the Battle of Antietam would kick off with Hooker's corps launching a spirited attack on Lee's left flank, preceding which, waves of repeated Union assaults and Confederate counter-assaults would ensue across Miller's cornfield and the West Woods in violent confrontation. All the while, towards the center of the battlefield, the Union would push their way into the key defensive position of the Sunken Road, which they would hold for a time before being forced to abandon the route. Finally, through the afternoon, a third assault launched under Major General Ambrose E. Burnside's 9th Corps would push Confederates back across a small bridge spanning Antietam Creek, which is now known as Burnside's Bridge. Though just before the Confederate right flank collapsed, Confederate Major General A.P. Hill would come charging into the battle, following a long and brutal march from Harper's Ferry, and just in the nick of time, in order to drive back Burnside's assault and save what was left of the Army of Northern Virginia. In the end, while the battle was chalked up as a Confederate tactical victory, ultimately, and in proportion, losses faced by the Confederacy were much higher, and in the end, it would be considered a Union triumph. Out of 87,000 Union soldiers, losses totaled around 12,401, while the Confederacy, who sported only around half those soldiers in force, suffered nearly as many losses at 10,316, for a grand total of about 22,717 combined casualties in under one day. Following the war, in 1890, the expanse was formally established as the Antietam National Battlefield Site. In 1933, the locale was transferred to the War Department. In 1962, a visitor center was constructed. In 1966, it was added to the National Register of Historic Places. And in 1978, the whole of the park was redesignated. Today, Antietam is a popular stop for history buffs, sightseers, and paranormal enthusiasts alike, and boasts a number of educational venues and landmarks, a cemetery that was fashioned at the end of the war, a field hospital museum, and much, much more. Incidentally, among its many features, Bloody Lane Trail has grown wildly in popularity as a route that skirts pretty much the entire battlefield, and one on which that visitors who travel it often report close encounters with the otherworldly. Of the most common phenomena experienced on site are accounts of phantom gun and cannon fire, the clash of battle, the smells of gunpowder, blood, and cauterization, and the cries of war. And a multitude of tales tell of parties coming across entire scenes of battle that they at first think reenactments, until all soldiers present fade away in the blink of an eye. One more famous story concerns a group of students from Baltimore that were walking the lane for a field trip. As it's told, nearly everyone in this group swore they heard singing, drumming, and a chant that sounded similar to the Christmas song Deck the Halls, but reported that these commotions were entirely without source, and that when they tried to locate where they were coming from, the tunes started up again from different directions. Not surprisingly, the aforementioned Burnside's Bridge is purported to be a hotspot of supernatural activity, and there, many have documented orbs spied floating the crossing after dark, and visions of AP Hill's final brave charge against a superior Union force. Lastly, an assortment of paranormal investigations have been hosted at Antietam and have yielded high EMF fluctuations, chilling EVPs, and hits on communicative devices such as spirit boxes, while others have described extreme cold patches felt in adverse weather, shadowy figures sighted on the horizon, and the constant feeling of being watched. Okay, now as a change of pace from all the dreariness, number 4 takes us to the Hawaiian island of Oahu and onto the Manoa Falls Trail. The ever-famous Manoa Falls Trail, which skirts the Manoa Valley out of Honolulu on Oahu in Hawaii, is a breathtaking trek through paradise that, in modern times, has been featured in a number of movies, series, and photo shoots, and its bounds are shrouded in ancient Hawaiian legends and tales of spectral encounters. Historically, the Manoa Valley waterfall is believed to have formed initially some thousands of years ago as a result of erosion from a stream that pushed down from the top of the valley after it literally forced its way over the edge of its embankment, forming the prestigious flow that we know today. Through the centuries, ancient Hawaiians believed the whole of the Manoa Valley was a place inhabited by the gods, and that the waterfall held great spiritual power, acting as a door or stairway to their realm. Much later, after colonization of the islands, and through the 19th century, Western settlers would begin unwanted development of the lush valley ecosystem, and through the early 20th century, a trail was formally constructed along what was believed to be an ancient route that native tribes likely utilized to hunt, bathe, and gather wood. Since its construction, and over the next century, traffic on the Manoa Falls Trail would increase rapidly, and today, it stands as the second most popular trail on Oahu. There was a side note for any planning a visit, the water level and flow can decrease through the summer months, so some feel it's best to catch it through the spring, fall, or winter. Notably, the Manoa Falls Trail is not without its risks, and over the years, a number of deaths have transpired near due to accidents and even illness. The Hawaii State Department of Health strongly discourages touching water within the small pools surrounding the falls, as they often contain leptospirosis and other bacterias, which, in healthy adults, can cause flu-like symptoms for up to 2 weeks, but that can prove fatal for the elderly or immunocompromised. Additionally, in 2012, one Philip S. Mann, a tourist from Florida, would slip from the falls and his body was discovered in the riverbed the following day. And in 2016, 19-year-old Christy Takanishi would make the same mistake while taking pictures with her friends and would die from blunt force trauma 2 days later. Despite its numerous risks, Manoa Falls has accommodated a range of high-profile film productions, including but not limited to Jurassic Park, the prominent series Lost, 50 First Dates, The Descendants, Hawaii Five-0, The Hunger Games: Catching Fire, and even Magnum P.I. It remains a popular tourist destination into the present and is frequented by nature enthusiasts, athletes, historians, and, in more recent times, paranormal investigators. Chillingly, along the whole of the Manoa Falls Trail, both visitors and even government officials have reported a wide range of inexplicable happenings, including instances of personal possessions going missing and turning up later much further down the trail, of run-ins with odd half-animal, half-human creatures, and of the constant feeling that someone or something is always watching, lurking somewhere just out of sight. The spirits of all those who have slipped or even jumped to their deaths from the falls, both documented and undocumented, are believed to remain along the trail, and at night, several have reported actually watching full silhouettes topple over the edge, and have even panicked for a moment, thinking they're witnessing something terrible, before said forms disappear entirely right at the moment of would-be impact. Also reported through the whole of the Manoa Valley are eerie, banshee-like screams heard echoing through the forests, strange, wraith creatures spied darting amongst the foliage, and sightings of various full-bodied apparitions in attire ranging from ancient to more modern garments. Easily the most famous legend surrounding the region tells the whole of the locale is frequented by the dreaded Night Marchers, which are ancient warrior spirits from Hawaiian lore. Eerily, these terrifying manifestations are said to announce their presence with the blaring scream of a conch shell, followed by an ominous drumming that grows closer and closer, and eventually, the light from their torches and ignited weapons bathes the immediate area with a threatening glow. Understandably, the Night Marchers are said to instill terror in any who behold them, donning heavy armor and carrying a variety of weapons. However, contrary to all instinct, it's said that running from this undead legion will only result in a swift and painful death, or in them sweeping you up and taking you off to God knows where. And it's recommended that should you find yourself in their presence, that you immediately drop to the ground and lay on your stomach, with your head hidden, and whatever you do, never meet their gaze. Now, if these steps are completed successfully, it's told the army will pass right by and continue on into the night. Last but not least, lace up your hiking boots and stock a day pack as we chart Washington and the Olympic Peninsula's iconic and sweeping Hoh River Trail. The Hoh River Trail, which is located on the sprawling and breathtaking Olympic Peninsula on the western coast of the Pacific Northwestern state of Washington, is a tree-enshrouded and overgrown pathway winding through thick rainforests, subalpine meadows, and dense pinelands. That's length is shrouded in ancient legends and tales of ghostly encounters. Historically, circa 12,000 BCE, the Hoh River Valley along with the surrounding landscapes were formed through a mass ice retreat, and, incidentally, glacially carved valleys. Circa 11,400 BCE, prehistoric hunters utilized the region for hunting, as discovered by mastodon remains with primitive projectiles embedded in them. And much later, circa 1200 BCE, the Maka people would inhabit Nia Bay. In around 1560 CE, a large mudslide engulfed a Maka village, leading to stories of the Great Slide that persist even into the present. Around 200 to 500 years ago, the Ozit tribe would carve petroglyphs near what is now known as Wedding Rock. Through the late 1700s, smallpox outbreaks would wipe out more than 11,000 native inhabitants through the area, which was actually almost 30% of the northwestern native populace. In 1852, another outbreak would result in the Maka nation abandoning the village of Bahida, and in 1853, the Washington Territory was formally established. In 1855, the Treaty of Nia Bay would result in the creation of a Maka reservation. Later the same year, the Point of No Return Treaty would result in the forming of a Skokomish reservation. And from 1855 to 56, the Quinault River Treaty or the Treaty of Olympia would establish a Quinault reservation. Notably, along the Hoh River itself, what were known as the Hoh River Indians would thrive along the current, and were a band derived from the Quileute tribe, though they did identify as an entirely separate people. More recently, in 1889, Washington was formalized as a state. The same year, a Quileute reservation was established. In 1893, the Ozit and Hoh reservations were formed, and in 1897, the Olympic Forest Reserve was officiated under President Grover Cleveland in an effort to protect and preserve the impressive old growth from aggressive logging practices and industrialization. In 1907, the preserve would be re-established as the Olympic National Forest. Over subsequent years, it would grow in popularity as a nature retreat, harboring a number of resorts and businesses. Through the 1930s and early 40s, the Civilian Conservation Corps would construct a slew of roads, campgrounds, structures, and more. And in 1938, Olympic National Park was formally established, with its dedication ceremony transpiring in 1946. Today, the Olympic National Park stretches a mind-blowing 922,650 acres and includes some of the most diverse ecosystems in the country, if not on the continent. Within this expanse lies the Hoh rainforest, which centers around the Hoh River that runs 56 miles from the glaciers of Mount Olympus through its signature old growth into the Pacific coast, and its associated river trail has become popular amongst nature enthusiasts, hikers, historians, and more recently, paranormal investigators. And rightfully so, as over its lengthy utilization, both visitors and officials have reported a wide range of chilling activity, including extreme cold patches and drumming heard in the distance, instances of personal electronics dying even on full batteries, and tales of vehicles behaving erratically or of them stalling out inexplicably, leaving their drivers and passengers stranded in the dense woodlands. One more famous story tells that long ago, a young woman fell into the Hoh River late at night and perished either in its current or possibly from the cold. To date, those who walk the trail after dark have told of run-ins with an ominous woman in white who emits unearthly, sorrowful wails, and that some claim is dangerous and may be trying to drag lone travelers to a watery fate to join her in the afterlife. Interestingly enough, the whole of the Hoh rainforest and Olympic Peninsula is recognized as the land of Sasquatch, and many have reported encounters with Bigfoot and other cryptids from native lore, including Wendigo, skinwalkers, and even a bat squatch, which is literally a massive hulking hominid bat creature that's been known to get quite aggressive at times, and that legend tells was released into our world following the explosion of Mount St. Helens, prior to which some believe it resided either in hell or deep beneath the earth. But it's not all ghosties and monsters along the Hoh River Trail, and since the 1960s and 70s, a slew of documentations detailing cult sightings and the discovery of ritual signs have been reported. More disturbingly are accounts of the sighting of tall goat men in dark robes that have hooves for feet and that some believe are Satan's minions. Lastly, all along the Hoh, many have told of phantom campfires spied in the distance and orbs that flit amongst trees, while others of close calls with nature spirits, fairies, or trees that have become animate and that use their branches in an attempt to snatch up those who get too close. Thanks for joining me on this journey over some of the most haunted hiking trails in the US. If you enjoyed hearing my histories and ghost stories, subscribe to my channel, throw this upload a like, and share me with all of your friends and fam. I'll see you all next time, and stay safe out there.